USS Saratoga floats above the deceptively quiet waters of Bikini Atoll, her deck sporting scars of battles past. She's been tested time and again, but no torpedo, fire, or kamikaze attack has claimed her just yet. But all of Saratoga's previous encounters were a walk in the park compared to what was coming next. 520 feet above, the 23-kiloton Fat Man-type plutonium bomb named Gilda erupts in a blinding flash of light. The shockwave smashes into Saratoga's storied hull. Her superstructure shudders on the brink of collapse. Still, deep within her hull, Saratoga holds a unique advantage, a relic of her origins in the 1920s. And that advantage just might be the key to surviving the full fury of an atomic blast. It was a devastating blow to the U.S. Navy. USS Saratoga was still being welded together at the New York Shipbuilding Corporation shipyard when the order to scrap her came down. The promise of her first sail suddenly shattered. Millions of dollars invested, months of blood, sweat, and labor, all for nothing. America was losing a state-of-the-art warship that had been so close to completion, yet ripped away before she ever saw the open sea. The culprit was the Washington Naval Treaty of 1922, an agreement between the world's most potent navies that demanded every capital ship under construction be scrapped immediately. Saratoga, classified as a capital ship, was no exception, but the Navy wouldn't give up so easily. Buried in the treaty's fine print lay a loophole. Each nation could convert 2 capital ships into aircraft carriers. Saratoga could still sail, not as the battlecruiser she was designed to be, but as an aircraft carrier for a new generation of maritime warfare. In the 1920s, the concept of launching warplanes from a dedicated warship was still revolutionary. However, the U.S. Navy was not afraid of innovation. By 1922, it had transformed the collier USS Jupiter into the first American aircraft carrier, USS Langley. Saratoga wouldn't be the first U.S. warship with a flight deck, but she would be the first purpose-built carrier in American history. Yet her origins as a battlecruiser made her unlike any other carrier of World War II. When the conversion began, the lower half of the ship was nearly complete, meaning Saratoga kept the heavy armor belt of a battlecruiser, along with the torpedo protection system already in place. She was a fascinating hybrid, equipped with 8 8-inch 55 caliber Mark IX guns, giving her the firepower of a heavy cruiser. Saratoga was a warship like no other. As the Navy began to understand the critical role of carrier fleets, she was poised to become their star. Not even the most experienced sailors had ever seen anything like her. On November 16, 1927, the day Saratoga was commissioned into the United States Navy, she stretched an imposing 888 feet, a massive floating airfield with a sleek, towering island that seemed to scrape the sky. Her deck, packed with early naval aircraft, looked like something out of a science fiction magazine, a warship transformed for the age of the skies. Her striking presence didn't go unnoticed by Hollywood, which approached the Navy to feature the vessel in the 1932 film Helldivers. The movie, centered on 2 rival dive bomber pilots, took place almost entirely aboard Saratoga and catapulted her to international fame. But it wasn't just the public that had high expectations for America's new aircraft carrier. As one of the first U.S. carriers fully designed for the role, Saratoga had to help shape what would become America's carrier doctrine. Throughout the 1930s, Saratoga became the centerpiece of the U.S. Navy's annual fleet problems, large-scale combat drills that thrust sailors and aviators into intense, simulated battle scenarios. Due to her size and her ability to deploy aircraft, Saratoga was always the prime target for opposing forces in these war games. This forced the Navy to develop tactics to protect its carriers, and strategies that allowed carriers to unleash overwhelming offensive power and use their aircraft to defend themselves. The doctrine pioneered by Saratoga became the backbone of U.S. carrier operations. This strategy would prove crucial to the Navy's success in World War II. By 1941, Saratoga, though aging, had undergone significant modernization. She was fitted with the new SC air search radar and torpedo blisters, and external bulges were added to her hull to enhance protection against torpedoes. Saratoga was in San Diego, embarking her flight group when Japan attacked Pearl Harbor on December 7, 1941. The vessel was immediately ordered to sail for Hawaii. The time for drills was over. War had begun. Saratoga's entry into the war was a disaster. After Pearl Harbor, Japan set its sights on Wake Island, a vital atoll with the U.S. Marine garrison and airfield. On December 8th, 36 Japanese bombers from the Marshall Islands struck hard, destroying 8 Wildcats and tearing apart the airfield. Only 4 Wildcats survived to fend off the next assault. On December 11th, Japan launched an amphibious invasion. Dozens of ships closed in on Wake Island, ready to unleash their troops. But the Marines were waiting. Coastal artillery roared to life, hammering the invasion force, while the surviving Wildcats launched furious aerial attacks. Chaos erupted as shells ripped into Japanese vessels, and a direct hit from a 5-inch gun sent the destroyer Hayate to the bottom, the first Japanese surface ship sunk by U.S. forces in World War II. The ferocity of the defense stunned the Japanese, forcing them into a retreat. That same day, Saratoga refueled at Pearl Harbor and was dispatched to relieve Wake Island's defenders. The Navy knew another, far bigger attack was coming for Wake, and Saratoga was their best hope. But her task force was plagued by delays, destroyers needing refueling, and a slow-moving tanker holding them back. Saratoga couldn't sail at her top speed. By the time she neared the island on December 22, 1941, Navy brass feared a Japanese carrier fleet capable of obliterating Saratoga was on the way. The order to turn back was given. Wake Island was abandoned to its fate. On December 23rd, after a desperate defense by Marines, Navy personnel, and even civilian contractors, Wake Island fell to an overwhelming Japanese invasion. Over 1,600 were taken prisoner. Saratoga had failed to reach them in time. Saratoga's bad luck didn't end there. On the morning of January 11th, 1942, while sailing off Oahu, Japanese submarine I-6 slipped through Allied defenses and came within range of the carrier. It seized the opportunity, launching a torpedo straight at the ship's longside. The explosion was deafening, ripping into Saratoga's side just above her armor belt. 3 boiler rooms flooded instantly, and the ship began listing. 6 sailors lost their lives in the blast. Steam hissed from the twisted metal as the crew scrambled to fight the flooding, desperate to keep her afloat. With her boiler rooms crippled, Saratoga could barely move, inching forward at minimal speed. She limped back to Pearl Harbor, where she needed extensive repairs. Her first voyage into war had been a crushing letdown, but the war was far from over, and Saratoga would get her chance to prove her worth. The Japanese had the Americans backed into a corner. Not only was one of their most colossal carriers incapacitated and undergoing repairs, but after Wake Island, the threat of another Japanese invasion was ever present. Saratoga's crew had no choice but to remove her 8-inch gun turrets, positioning them along the shores of Oahu to serve as coastal defenses in the event of a full-scale attack on Pearl Harbor. The American forces knew that for Saratoga to rejoin the fight, she had to be prepared to withstand the might of the Japanese Navy. It was decided she would receive significant upgrades. Her anti-aircraft defenses were reinforced with 4 twin 5-inch dual-purpose gun mounts, and 32 Oerlikon 20mm cannons were installed around the flight deck. By the time repairs were completed, USS Saratoga had become one of the most capable aircraft carriers in the Pacific, despite her age. In July 1942, Saratoga set sail once more, this time heading to the Southwest Pacific, as American forces prepared for their first major ground offensive against Japan around the island of Guadalcanal. As Saratoga pushed through violent waters, an ominous silhouette appeared on the horizon. American aircraft approached to confirm this was no friendly vessel, but rather the Japanese carrier Ryujo. Despite her lighter build, Ryujo was a daunting foe, carrying a strike force of fighters, dive bombers, and torpedo bombers that had already contributed to the sinking of the U.S. destroyer Pope and damaged multiple Allied warships. Saratoga's crew knew they had no time to waste, and upon confirming the coordinates of Ryujo, they deployed a strike group consisting of 31 Douglas SBD Dauntless dive bombers and 8 Grumman TBF Avenger torpedo bombers. The planes closed in swiftly, unleashing 1,000-pound bombs and torpedoes that struck devastating blows to the Japanese ship before she could unleash her fighters. Fires and flooding quickly overwhelmed Ryujo, leaving her unable to launch aircraft or sustain power. The order to abandon ship came soon after. As Saratoga witnessed the sinking of her first enemy carrier, it became clear her streak of bad luck was over. She was ready to turn the tide in the Pacific. Despite Saratoga's constant improvements, the Pacific Theater continued to test her resilience. Shortly after her victory in the Guadalcanal campaign, she was struck again on August 31st, 1942. A torpedo from the Japanese submarine I-26 hit Saratoga while patrolling east of the Solomon Islands, disabling key electrical circuits and leaving her dead in the water. It was only thanks to her recently installed torpedo blisters that she avoided sinking to the bottom of the sea. With enemy vessels nearby, the crew knew they were now a 41,000-ton sitting duck. Rather than abandoning the ship, the sailors chose to fight for Saratoga's survival. Managing to restore partial power, the vessel barely made its way back to Pearl Harbor with the assistance of the cruiser Minneapolis. Once more, Saratoga was forced to undergo repairs if she were to carry on with her Pacific crusade. While undergoing repairs, Saratoga's 1.1-inch gun mounts were replaced with quadruple Bofors 40mm mounts, and her anti-aircraft system was upgraded with 52 Oerlikon guns. Saratoga's new firepower was tested while supporting landings on Bougainville in November 1943. Breaking through the heavily defended Japanese port of Rabaul, Saratoga launched countless airstrikes on Japanese airfields and the port itself, delivering a critical blow to the Japanese fleet. However, Saratoga's ultimate wartime test came on February 21, 1945, as U.S. Marines fought to capture Iwo Jima. Approaching alongside a larger fleet, Saratoga was engulfed by a swarm of Japanese kamikaze warplanes. Bursts of flak climbed skyward, shaping a shield around the Allied warships, but this wasn't enough. Saratoga's crew had to helplessly witness as the escort carrier USS Bismarck Sea collapsed beneath the waves after being slammed by several kamikaze planes. Despite taking down several dozen enemy planes, some of them slipped through the cracks. 5 kamikaze aircraft crashed into the ship in the span of 3 minutes, resulting in the loss of 123 sailors. Severely damaged, she was effectively put out of commission for the rest of the war, marking her final battle operation. Yet, Saratoga's wartime service was not over. Following Japan's surrender, the ship was assigned to Operation Magic Carpet, the massive repatriation effort to bring American troops home. Saratoga traversed the Pacific with over 29,000 soldiers aboard, achieving the most repatriations of any individual ship. After helping shift the tides of war in the Pacific and helping bring U.S. servicemen home, it seemed Saratoga's career was ending. However, its most significant contribution to the future of U.S. military capabilities had yet to come. Despite being partially repaired for post-war troop transport, USS Saratoga had sustained irreparable damage during the Iwo Jima campaign, rendering her unfit for further combat operations. At this time, the U.S. government aimed to conduct research on the impact of nuclear weapons on traditional naval fleets, selecting a series of vessels to undergo atomic testing in open waters. Given her iconic status as one of World War II's most prolific carriers, Saratoga became one of the prime candidates for these historic tests. During Operation Crossroads in mid-1946 at Bikini Atoll, Saratoga faced her first strike, a 23-kiloton Fat Man-type plutonium bomb named Gilda, similar to the one dropped on Nagasaki. Released from a B-29 bomber and detonated 520 feet above the target fleet, the airburst shockwave crashed into Saratoga's deck, inflicting severe fire damage. However, as she had proven time and time again, Saratoga was one resilient ship. Be it due to its unique armor belt configuration or the protective features inherited from her origins as a battle cruiser, the old carrier survived the atomic blast with minimal damage. The second strike, however, finally proved too much to withstand. A 23-kiloton underwater blast from a similar bomb was the one responsible for ultimately sinking her, causing severe structural damage and flooding her with radioactive water. Saratoga collapsed approximately 8 hours after the detonation, sinking to the bottom of the ocean, alongside other notable wartime cruisers, submarines, and destroyers, effectively marking the end for one of the most legendary ships to have ever set sail in the Pacific. USS Saratoga was officially struck from the Navy list on August 15, 1946, but her legacy would live on long after. Her extraordinary wartime service, pivotal role in advancing naval warfare doctrine during World War II, and setting a record with 98,549 aircraft landings over her 17-year career, earned her 7 battle stars and multiple campaign decorations, including the World War II Victory Medal.